Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecini. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, Chris Stone is back. He had to take a quick little journey for his job into the mean streets of Delaware. Was it Delaware, right?
It was Delaware. Nice little
Delaware.
2.5 week jaunt to Wilmington.
Yeah. So Chris is here. We're going to talk about the NCAA Tournament, but we're going to do it a little bit differently. We're going to talk about it from the perspective of if you are an NBA draft fan and looking at the NCAA Tournament from the perspective of just being an NBA fan, basically. What should you be watching for? What should you be looking for? Chris, before I get into all of that, please tell me, how are we doing, man? Is everything going okay?
Yeah, everything's going pretty well. Back currently on vacation, so now just living up lifestyle and get to watch a bunch of basketball this week, so I'm pretty excited for that.
Getting to watch basketball is clutch. It is the most important thing you can do on a week like this, where Thursday and Friday you have all just great afternoon action, and then Sunday I have to get on a plane and go down to Atlanta for 48 hours for McDonald's practices, and then come back out.
Those are good.
They're fine. I mean, I'm gonna be really interested to see if everyone is a little bit on alert after last season and the Nasir Little excitement that everyone had after McDonald's and
Sure.
Jordan Brand and all of those games, because boy, that did not go well.
Yeah, not super great for him, but those practices are still enlightening. You get to see a little bit, interact with the kids a little bit, which is always kind of nice. The Hawks facility is nice, so that'll be good.
Yeah, let's just note real quickly here that betonline.ag and Robinhood are our sponsors today. I will also just note, I am sure that at some point within this conversation, we will touch on gambling, because that is something that we do here, or at least something that I do here. So let's start in the top left. We're going to go down the left side of the bracket, then we're going to move to the right side of the bracket. Duke, North Carolina Central, North Dakota State, and then there's also VCU and UCF. The way that we're going to do this is we're going to do it by pods of 4 teams so that we can also talk about potential second round matchups as well. So Duke, obviously, against North Dakota State or NC Central is not going to be a particularly exciting matchup. I will note that North Dakota State has a kid named Dengu. He is 6'7", 6'8", has long arms, actually can do some things to match up with one of Duke's guys. And then if it's NC Central, they are in the bottom 10 of the teams in the country nationally in turnover rate. So that is going to turn into a dunk fest out in transition for Duke if they play NC Central.
Yeah, I'm pretty much only interested in this pod for the dunks. Duke versus NC Central in that situation. Obviously, I think the most exciting possible second round thing here is Zion trying to dunk on Taco Fall. Not even the game itself, just that game within the game. Because, frankly, Duke is far better than all 3 teams in this pod. They have way more NBA prospects than anybody else in this pod. I don't know that there's a lot of super interesting risk here for Duke. But if you want to see the height of the Duke powers, the first round game is certainly one you can watch. So I've
got, just kind of updating through my board, I've got Zion Williamson at 1, RJ Barrett at number 2. I have Cam Reddish down at 7 right now. And then I've got Trey Jones at 28. So those are really your only 4 top 100 prospects in this little quad of 4. I would note that Aubrey Dawkins at UCF, while being remarkably close to me in age, is also semi-real as a prospect. 39% is a shooter, can really knock down shots off of screens, off the move. BJ Taylor, Taco Fall, sort of interesting. And then VCU doesn't really have any prospects, but VCU is a good defensive team. I actually am excited for that second round matchup, though, because UCF will just sit in zone and force Duke to shoot over the top of them. And then VCU plays unbelievably tough man-to-man defense. It actually has a body to throw at Zion Williamson and Marcus Santos Silva. So you're sitting here, you look at the two teams. VCU is 10th in 2-point percentage against. UCF is 14th in 2-point percentage against. I actually think that like these two teams can cause Duke some issues.
Yeah, they probably can be a little bit difficult for Duke for sure. But
I'm not saying they're going to win either.
Yeah,
I'm just saying like, hey, they'll cause issues.
Yeah, the fact that VCU is so good defensively is certainly something worth paying attention to, because I think if there's a risk of Duke getting knocked off in the tournament, it's just that they have some kind of disaster offensive game where they're not able to shoot at a reasonable clip because they're bad at shooting, and in a tight game that gets them. So in theory, I guess I could see both of those potentially being problematic for Duke, or at least creating maybe a better game than we expect. But at the same time, like, they're just not going to be able to match up, and that's ultimately like why Duke is thriving despite the fact that they can't shoot.
Yeah, like athletically, VCU has athletes that they can at least like run at Duke. And the reason we're going to spend more time on Duke than most teams just because Duke. But like VCU has actual athletes with size and length that they can throw at Duke. I think that my preferred matchup from a fun standpoint is seeing Duke have to match up with Taco Fall, because Jesus, that would be so fun to see Zion, like Chris said, try and dunk on Taco Fall. But, VCU is probably the more translatable matchup, is maybe the way to put it.
Yeah, I think that's right. VCU is likely more threatening to Duke than UCF is. But at the same time, if we're just rooting for fun, it's rooting for Taco Fall to get dunked on. No offense to Taco Fall, but just like sometimes you got to end up on a poster, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're looking for here. With Duke, do you have any like overriding thoughts on that quad of prospects, really, with Zion, RJ, Cam, and Trey Jones?
I mean, I don't think there's much to say about Zion at this point. Like, he's the best prospect in college since at least Anthony Davis. And then, the really interesting takes probably come with Barrett and Reddish and how highly you rate either of those guys. I think that from my perspective for Barrett, I wouldn't be the most excited to be the team that is drafting him. I would be a very excited team to potentially trade him, because I think his trade value will be pretty high. And I have real questions about whether or not he can be an actual star, which is something that I'd be looking for with the top 3 pick. Reddish to me is an interesting candidate. Like, I really wonder where Reddish would rank on a draft board if we didn't have his high school priors, because frankly, like, he hasn't been good. And even with the high school priors, I think that there are some questions, because if the idea of Reddish as a ball handler, which he was in high school, is supposed to be, something we're looking forward to, then it's really hard to get excited about that, given that he's shooting like 40% on twos. And if he's going to be the guy who's creating your offense, I think it's really hard to imagine, him being great at the NBA level. Like, when I was kind of getting ready for this and just looking over those things, I released a big board earlier this year with Reddish at 4, and it's just like, man, that dude probably has to go lower, because I'm not really sure what he fits in doing in the NBA. Yeah,
like, you talk to NBA executives, like, you kind of don't do that, like, maybe a little bit, but, like, I do it quite a bit now, and they'll tell you that Cam is moving down their board, but then, like, you'll ask them, oh, who are you moving ahead of them? They'll just, like, kind of blankly say, yeah, like, I wouldn't want to draft Cam in the top 8.
Right.
Or, like, I wouldn't want to draft him in the top 9. And then you say, oh, well, who are you going to take ahead of him? Or, like, what prospect do you like more?
Yep.
And you can't really come up with an answer. And, it's not one of the situations where, like, they're just not telling you. It's really hard to come up with an answer of who you would draft ahead of Cam Reddish. Like, Jarrett Culver, I would be comfortable with. Would you draft Romeo Langford over Cam Reddish? I'd probably rather have Cam Reddish. Would you rather have Jackson Hayes or Cam Reddish? I would rather default to the wing, who I think can be like, multi-positionally value. Would you rather have Rui or Cam Reddish? I mean, like, I can see the argument for Rui, but, like, I'd rather have Cam, because I think there's a real chance that Rui is a small ball 5 if he doesn't learn to shoot. So, like, who's the guy? It just keeps coming back to who is the guy that you're going to say, hey, I'm going to take him over Cam Reddish once you get to, like, number 7 or number, wherever.
Yeah, it gets really complicated. The person who I'll keep an eye on, perhaps, who I think is really good, is Brandon Clark Obviously, he's significantly older, but I think he poses an interesting question about philosophically looking at the draft and searching out star power versus winning players. Brandon Clark basically checks every box for someone who can contribute to winning in the NBA. Kind of like I've started to think of him as like a super version of Jordan Bell when he was coming out. Yeah. And
well, let's wait until we get to Gonzaga to talk about Brandon Clark.
I just wonder if that's the type of player who could make that jump.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll make that jump. We'll talk about him in a minute, but I am generally with you. I realized looking at Hoops Hype, so Hoops Hype does like an aggregate mock draft, right?
Right.
So I am considerably higher on Brandon Clark in the aggregate mock draft than everyone else is. I have him 8 or 9 spots higher.
Yeah.
But you talk to me about him, and I am a lot more questionable on it than what I think most people are throughout this process. So let's move on to this next foursome of teams. Mississippi State, Liberty, Virginia Tech, St. Louis. This one will not be as long of a conversation. Mississippi State, I will say, they have 5 guys that are actually pretty interesting to some extent. They do have Lamar Peters. They have Quindry Weatherspoon, Reggie Perry, Eric Holman. Nick Weatherspoon is suspended right now, but exists for Mississippi State, and it's unclear on what his status is going forward. Anyone there that particularly interests you?
Eric Holman's pretty interesting if you like bigs who can shoot. He blocks a few shots. I'm not sure that'll translate to the NBA level. Quindry Weatherspoon sort of fills every statistical category, which is really nice, but at the same time, it's not clear that he's an NBA level player. So there are a lot of, I think, really good college players and perhaps fringe pro prospects in that on that roster, but it's not that there's anybody who really jumps out that says, this is someone you must watch.
So I would probably rank them long-term. Reggie Perry at number 1, Quindry Weatherspoon at number 2, Holman at 3, Peters at 4. I am not... Eric Holman, the problem with him is, he's kind of a fake defender. And he can shoot the ball, but... there's a reason that he has fallen out of, Mississippi State's starting lineup at times this year. And it's mostly because he struggles defensively and because Reggie Perry took his spot. Reggie Perry is still a year away, I think. He was awesome in SEC play, just an absolute beast. I thought he was going to be one of the most productive freshmen in college basketball this season. It took him a while, but he's kind of getting close to that. 6'10", 245, can step away and shoot a little bit. Really, really good rebounder. Not much of a passer yet. That's the next step for him, being able to actually initiate stuff. And then Quindry Weatherspoon, has just done it all this year. He's shooting 40% from 3. He's averaging 18.5 points. Super efficient as a scorer. He's become a better defender. He's just kind of rounded out his game as a senior to where I wouldn't be totally shocked if a team gave him a 2-way next year.
Yeah, that seems about where he fits, yeah.
Yeah, and then number 12, Liberty. Liberty does not really have any NBA prospects, and just generally fuck Liberty. So that's about all that's about all I got on that one. We're rooting hard for Mississippi State in that game at the Game Theory podcast because, fuck Liberty. Virginia Tech at the number 4 in this region, obviously, is Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is sitting at number 13 on my board. I also have Justin Robinson ranked. I have him at 92. He is, I think, just going to be a guy that might get a 2-way contract so that he can actually allow teams to evaluate their G League team in a way. Because, it's hard to find point guards that can really distribute at that level. Sure. And also, I would throw in Ahmed Hill, Ty Outlaw, Kerry Blackshear as guys that are, kind of interesting. They play St. Louis. I will say this is an interesting matchup to something of an extent. And the reason that I will say that is St. Louis has a lot of tough physical defenders. I would imagine they're just going to throw Javon Bess, who was all A-10 defense, at Nickeil Alexander-Walker and just try and make his life just miserable.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go with it. I think that St. Louis has some talent and, like you said, tough dudes who will guard Virginia Tech really well. The problem, obviously, I think, if you put Javon Bess on Nickeil Alexander-Walker, then you're sacrificing some size and stuff elsewhere because they don't really have enough perimeter size in my mind, and that makes things a little bit more difficult. I don't expect St. Louis to really compete in this game necessarily. Maybe like we get a close first half and Virginia Tech pulls away in the second or something like that. But from a prospect perspective, obviously Nickeil Alexander-Walker is the player to watch here. And you hope that perhaps he gets an interesting matchup in the second round against that collection of Mississippi State players we already mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will be interested to see how Nickeil responds to these two teams filled with athleticism. Nickeil this year has been pretty good for the most part in situations like that. You can look at Louisville. He dropped 17 on Louisville. He was fine there. You can look at North Carolina. He dropped 19 on North Carolina and their big loss to them. Florida State, he had 19 in their last game of the season and then had 21 in the ACC tournament. Duke, he was not like fantastic in their one game against Duke, but he still went for 13, 6, and 5 with 4 steals in that game. So he showed well. It was without Zion, but he showed well in that game against athleticism. I think that, he just plays so well at his own pace now that he's going to be fine in basically whatever matchup, you put him against. Getting him back with Justin Robinson is also going to be nice because it'll allow him to showcase both his on-ball and off-ball ability.
I agree with all of that. That makes a ton of sense to me. I'll be interested to watch him against those athletes. I mean, he's somebody where he's sort of proven it this year, but given his freshman season, you sort of are, I guess, always waiting for that backslide to happen, even though it may not ever happen.
Yeah. Let's move on. Maryland against Belmont now that Temple has been eliminated, and LSU against Yale. This is actually a really, really fun pod for NBA draft prospects. So Maryland has Bruno Fernando, who has moved into my top 25, at least. I have him at number 22. NBA teams that you'll talk to, a little bit more excited about him just because they tend to like centers more than I do. They'll tell you that he's definitely a top 20 guy. We'll talk about, we should talk about this now that I think about it, whenever we get through who the prospects are. But Jalen Smith I have as a top 45 prospect for Maryland. I don't think there's really Aaron Wiggins is a guy long-term, I would say, that is very interesting. 6'6", 7-foot wingspan, good player. Eric Ayala is semi-interesting. He's just old for his age. I think he's like 20 as a freshman right now. For Belmont, it's all about Dylan Windler. 68 true shooting percentage, 27.5 rebounding rate, good passer, gets in passing lanes defensively. This year, he shot 67% from 2-point range, 42% from 3-point range, and 85 from free throws. I mean, he's just an awesome prospect. What do you think of this Belmont-Maryland game?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think perhaps the going back to sort of joking about Zion and Taco Fall, but the game within the game that I'm interested in here is whether or not Windler can score efficiently at the rim against the likes of Fernando and Smith, largely because he's been really good at it. And even on assisted makes and all of the kind of things you'd look for to check the boxes there, he's been great at. But obviously when you take a step up in competition, it's always interesting to see how somebody responds there. So that's probably the thing that I will pay attention to the most here. Obviously lots of prospects on display, lots of opportunities, but they don't match up with one another perfectly, given they play different positions, obviously.
So, yeah, I would bring up Dylan Windler as well in this matchup. So he is not a guy that has played exceedingly well offensively against high-level teams this year. So I mentioned he has a 68 true shooting percentage this season. They've played 10 games against Tier A and B competition this year, according to KenPom. He has a 52.5 true shooting percentage in those games. Mostly it's because he hasn't shot well from 3, and I think that's a little bit noisy. But at the same time, this is a guy that can't really go out and get you his own. He is not a guy you say, hey, ISO on this defender who's probably going to be a little bit smaller than you because we're going to put a smaller guy on you because you can't really post. You can't really hurt us just with your back to the basket and hurt us. Drive to the basket. Go get us a bucket right now, Dylan. He just doesn't have the handle to do that. What he does well is moves off the ball, knocks down open shots. He's a perfect modern NBA role player. It's just that, in a game like this where he's very clearly Belmont's best player, he's not going to be the guy that goes out and gets them buckets.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And maybe we can take some solace in the fact that he's been a little better against high-level competition the last couple of years, but it is something that you don't get a ton of opportunities to see, and Maryland has players who, although they don't play the same position, can challenge him on the interior and make life a little bit more difficult. So he's probably the most interesting thing about this game. I'm a little probably lower on Fernando than you are, and that goes to some of the replacement effects in terms of bigs. The same is true for Jalen Smith, but both obviously are good players. And it's not like I wouldn't expect Bruno Fernando to have an interesting or good NBA career necessarily. It's just that, there's certain value in other positions.
So, yeah, we should talk about Bruno Fernando's year because he was really, really good this year. And he was really good for reasons that show growth in his game, especially when looking forward to a potential NBA career. Not the best defender, not a guy that you're going to just say, hey, you're going to shut down the rim for us. But offensively, Maryland has started to put him in some short roll actions. He can actually put the ball on the deck a little bit. He's a really, really good passer now out of short rolls. He's a really good low post passer now. Efficient as a scorer at the basket. A guy who will destroy the defensive glass for you. He will own that side of the spectrum. And then there's something there with that jump shot. I don't know that I fully trust it, but mechanically there is something there, I think, to grow on for him. The problem is the defense. It's just he is kind of a lesser DeAndre Ayton in a lot of ways. He's poor man's DeAndre Ayton. That's valuable. But I think it's valuable in the last third of the first round.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And frankly, I would probably let him slip into the second and be okay with it. The differentiator there, right, relative to other bigs is potentially that passing, I think. And I guess if he develops that jump shot a little bit more and becomes more consistent with it, I'm with you that maybe there's something there. It's just I don't know that we've seen enough to be confident in that yet. But I do think that the passing that you mentioned is real. The ability to do that consistently could be something that allows him to separate from all of the replacement level bigs who exist at the NBA level, and maybe that's sufficient. But it really is, for me, just a philosophical question of where bigs fit on a draft board, and it becomes harder to justify. But like I said, it's not that I don't expect Fernando to play in the NBA or be good in the NBA or anything like that. It's just that there are a lot of players who can potentially be like him unless that passing is sufficiently different for his position.
So, yeah, and then Jalen Smith, been a bit of overlap with Bruno this year in a lot of ways. I'm betting on him returning to school, to be honest. From what I've been told, there was something of a 2-year plan there for Jalen Smith. If he blew up this year, he'd be comfortable leaving. But if he didn't, which I don't really think he did unless he goes crazy in this NCAA tournament, there would be a comfort level staying in school. So, I mean, I like the idea of him. I just worry that he falls into the 4-5 tweener that you and I have talked about pretty extensively in the past.
Yeah, I was going to say he's sort of the kind of guy that I don't get super excited about. He doesn't necessarily project to be a great shooter, and he probably needs to be a good shooter at least to bring sufficient value at the position that he'll play, because I'm not entirely sure that he's big enough to do the rest. Things. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that people swear to me that he can shoot. He's made 18 of 66 from 3 this year, so that's not good. But people swear to me that he can shoot, so we'll find out. Sure. We'll find out next year if that's true.
Yeah, it's hard to buy a dude who's 18 of 66 from 3 and shooting 67% from the foul line as somebody who's actually a good shooter.
Yeah, Aaron Wiggins is definitely a good shooter. Doesn't really have much else there yet. He's just not quite there yet. But 40.1% from 3, 86% from the foul line. Just generally a dude that has a fascinating statistical profile. Not quite there yet, but when you throw the statistical profile in with the just general tools, I mean, he's 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan. There's a lot to be excited about there.
Yeah, he physically fits what you were looking for, and in an NBA that demands quality shooting, he's somebody worth keeping an eye on, even if he's probably not somebody who will be in the draft this year.
Yeah, no, he's definitely a 2020, 2021 guy. Let's talk about LSU and Yale. which is a fascinating game for a lot of reasons. I think Yale has the best NBA prospect in this game. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable to me. I don't think that that's wrong.
So what I would say is Mie Oni, who is 6'6", with about a 6'11"-ish wingspan at Yale. He is the kind of player that fits perfectly in as like a role player at the NBA level. 57 true shooting percentage, 21 assist rate, good block rate, good steal rate, knocks down 39% of his three-pointers, has been a pretty consistent free throw shooter. You know, when he plays against athletes, he tends to do well. What I will say, though, is that like they've only played 2 games against like high-level athletes this year. One was against Miami. He went nuts. And by the way, like I'm not counting this Cal game where they played in China. Like, sorry guys, just not doing it. Not for me. You know, they played Memphis. Memphis has some high-level athletes. I will say that. He went for like 15, 8, and 4 in that game. But against Miami, he goes for 29, 6, and an assist. And then against Duke, he struggled a little bit more. He went for 12, 9, and 5. So, you know, he is a guy that I do want to see against LSU's athleticism, because LSU, if there's one thing they have NBA-level athleticism from the 2 through 5 position.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I'm a little surprised that Mie Oni isn't getting a little bit of some like Jacob Evans treatment this year, in that he sort of fits the statistics. Yeah, I was going to say, like, if they beat LSU, he probably will, and maybe just as the draft process goes on, he will, because he sort of fits the statistical profile of what you would want defensively. Very much is obviously a good shooter, perhaps in ways that, you know, I think that there are probably a few more question marks with Jacob Evans as a shooter than there were with Oni. And so it would not surprise me to see him climb up a little bit higher as the process goes on, especially if people think that he can compete athletically with the other guys who are in that range.
Yeah, I've been saying this for a while. I think Mie Oni has a chance to go late first round. Like, I really do.
Yeah.
Would not surprise me at all. LSU, very interesting situation at LSU because Will Wade is out. Are you a Will Wade guy? I am in on Will Wade.
I mean, look, I'm a fan of dropping the bags, so
just drop the bag, baby. Drop it, Will. I'm here for it. He actually was doing a really good job. Hilarious thing that happened.
Yeah.
So I may or may not, after he was before he was suspended, after the news came out about him dropping the bag, or allegedly dropping the bag. Allegedly. Yes. I voted for him as one of my 3 nominees for National Coach of the Year.
Well, you know, recruiting's part of coaching, and he's doing well with that. So
he also did like a great job coaching too.
He did.
Like, he did a great job coaching this roster.
No, you're not wrong.
So Naz Reid, I have him like right around 40 or so on my board. Tremont Waters is probably in the top 120 or so. Javonte Smart and Skylar Mays are interesting prospects. Not necessarily. And Emmett Williams I would throw in this mix as well. I don't really know 100% what to do with them yet. I will be excited to see them next year, hopefully. Where are you at on Naz Reid, though? Because Reid is the most interesting guy here, I think.
Yeah, he's definitely the most interesting because he's super creative offensively and does a lot of things that in theory should be mismatches. Yeah. I wish that he were a better decision maker and passer. Like, he has a 1-to-3 assist to turnover ratio, which for someone who will develop most of his value on the offensive end is certainly not good. Just really not good defensively, and that's a problem.
I think that's like that's a kind statement to him. The way you put that, I know. Like, he's a really bad defender.
Yeah, and really, like, that may be enough to not let him play in the NBA. So if he's really bad at defense, he has to be really, really good at offense. And maybe he is in some areas, but the fact that he commits so many turnovers makes it really difficult to justify keeping him on the floor on that end too, at an NBA level. And so I'm significantly lower than where I was on him. Again, you mentioned this year, Little, as somebody who benefited from the All-Star circuit. I think Naz Reid, getting to play point Naz Reid in some of those All-Star games perhaps shaped how people thought of his value a little bit too much too.
Yeah, I don't think I ever had Naz higher than like 30 on my board, like something like that. I've since dropped him into. I think he's like a very clear second round prospect. The reason I say that is mostly because of the defense. I think he's a backup NBA center. And if I'm getting a backup NBA center, I'm just not taking that guy in the first round. There are too many centers out there.
Yep.
And you mentioned the assists. He has 3 assists in his last 9 games. I actually think that he can pass the ball a little bit. Like, you watch him.
I do too.
Like, he actually does make advanced passing reads regularly. It's very weird to me that, like, he just doesn't get he doesn't get the assist numbers. The turnovers are a problem. He does just, either driving the basketball or making the wrong decision passing the ball. He does turn the ball over too much. But the mix of shooting, he's at 37% from 3, with the ability to attack closeouts in the way that he can at his size, it's at least interesting to me, man. Like, I can't help but be intrigued.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fun player, too, so, like, it makes it easy to be intrigued about what he could bring to the table. It's just, really, he's battling for a really difficult position, and he has a lot of drawbacks, and that makes things complicated.
Like, I would take him 45 to 60 and not really think twice, but probably not in the top 45 right now.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Tremont Waters, do we want to talk about him? Do we want to mention the Naz Reid Bruno Fernando potential matchup? Because I think that is fascinating.
Yeah, that would be somewhat interesting. I don't mind that as a topic of conversation. Tremont Waters is like a shorter, less efficient, less good passing version of Trae Young, and the line between being Trae Young and being that is a big drop off.
Yeah, can we talk about the fact that Tremont Waters was co-SEC Defensive Player of the Year?
I mean, I guess that's a decision you can make.
Not a good one, that's to be sure. Does have the 5.3% steal rate, but if you watch like LSU actually defend, he is like a problem for them out there most of the time. Like, he's just small. If he's not getting in passing lanes, like, it's a problem. And then, like, the reason they got eliminated from the SEC tournament was he just totally fell asleep guarding Andrew Nembhard. And Nembhard goes out and knocks down a 3. Like, it was the most bizarre award I've seen, I think, this year. And that's coming from someone that, like, pays attention to these awards way more than I should.
Yeah, I feel like we always get some good postseason awards where you're like, wait a second, that doesn't jive at all.
That doesn't add up. What are we doing here? I'm running through. So LSU actually played like a pretty loaded schedule this year. I'm like making sure that LSU is actually better with him defensively on the floor. They were. That's good. It's at least nice that, LSU was like 5 points per 100 possessions better with him defensively on the floor.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, that's at least it's not a total disaster of a choice.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. But
it's pretty bad. I will also just mention this really quickly before we move on. I do think that Belmont is going to beat Maryland. And the reason that I say that is the transition game. Maryland, if you've watched Maryland this year, they do not do a good job of limiting turnovers. And Belmont will just dominate you in the turnover game. Like, Belmont is going to turn that ball over maybe like 5 times. Like, they have a top 20 turnover rate offensively. Maryland has the second worst turnover rate defensively. Belmont doesn't necessarily force a ton of turnovers, but Maryland will literally just throw them the ball at times. So, like, they're going to get transition opportunities in that game. It wouldn't surprise me to see Belmont have, like, a 15-point advantage in fast break points in that game. Whether or not that's enough to, like, get rid of the half-court advantage, just talent-wise, that Maryland should have in that game, I don't know. But I think that it's going to be really difficult to overcome.
Yeah, I agree. There's a real chance that that's an 11-14 matchup in the second round, I think.
There is. I agree. I would love to see Belmont-Yale. Give me the Dylan Windler.
That'd be really fun.
Matchup.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Next, we've got Louisville, Minnesota, Michigan State, Bradley. A lot more disappointing from a prospect perspective than what you would think.
Yeah.
So Louisville, Minnesota is the first game of the tournament, so you will watch it. But Jordan Wara is the best prospect in this pod. 6'7" shooter, not really a great athlete right now, though. Like, I don't think he should go to the NBA this year.
Yeah, I think that's right. Probably somebody who fits more as a power forward than as a perimeter player.
Right now, at least, yeah.
Yeah. And at that size, that's a bit of a struggle for him to survive.
I agree with that. He needs to go back and just continue working on his body, I think, and working on his quickness. And Louisville, has the program to do that. Some of these guys, they may not have the program to return to be the kind of guy who can do that. I think Louisville would really take care of him. There's no one really else on Louisville that's worth talking about. Minnesota has Amir Coffey. Amir Coffey has never really figured out how to shoot the basketball and never really figured out how to be efficient in his decision-making and in his ability to score. 54% true shooting percentage this year. Kind of like a point forward because they don't have a great point guard situation there. Jordan Murphy, another guy, like Junkyard Dog. Jordan Murphy is a guy that if you are a power forward prospect going into draft workouts, you are not going to want to see Jordan Murphy on the other side because he is going to be someone that makes people look bad in workouts, but I don't really think that he's anything more than a G League guy either.
Yeah, that sounds right on all counts to me.
Michigan State, Aaron Henry to me is Michigan State's most interesting prospect. We should talk about Cassius Winston real quick. He is an unbelievable pick and roll point guard. He can shoot really, really well from distance. He's an obviously really good passer. He is improved as a guy that will limit turnovers, but doesn't really defend, still turns it over too much, and just doesn't have a whole lot of size or athleticism.
Yeah, I'm probably a little higher on Winston than you are because of the pick and roll play and the ability to shoot off the bounce and off the catch. Also finishes at the rim probably better than you would expect for a guy who's 6'1", 185.
Yeah.
But like you said, the defense and the turnovers are certainly a real problem. It would not surprise me if he plays in the NBA for a while as a backup point guard, though, and that's pretty good.
I think that's reasonable, too.
And I agree with you about Aaron Henry being their best and most interesting guy long-term for sure. 6'6", shoots it.
Yep. Pretty good length, all sorts of athleticism, good frame, 38% from three. Still turns it over. He's still a 2021 prospect, but he is at least interesting. Nick Ward, no. I don't think Xavier Tillman's a prospect, but the thing that differentiates him from Nick Ward is that he's a really good defender.
Sure. But I also agree that I don't really think he's a prospect.
And Bradley, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I've watched a whole lot of Bradley this year.
I've watched a whole lot of zero Bradley this year. So.
Just absolutely not going to do it. Before we move on to the next segment here, though, let's talk about BetOnline. March Madness is upon us. It's another huge month in sports across the NBA and NCAA. There's only one place to get in on all this action. It's betonline.ag. Support our podcast by going to www.clnsmedia.com/win and use the promo code CLNS50 for a 50% sign-up bonus. That's CLNS50, betonline.ag, your online sportsbook experts. Look, I'll give you a couple things that I've already got money on. I lost money on Temple last night for what it's worth, too. I thought that their guards would cause Belmont problems. I am going to like Belmont. I do like Northeastern's money line. I don't really know that I love Kansas. I don't know that I love Northeastern against the number, but I do love...
As a Kansas grad who has watched lots of Kansas, I also like Northeastern's money line.
It's plus 260 or something right now.
Sure.
Yeah, look, I do like that one. I like St. Mary's a decent amount. There's just a lot of really, really fun games this NCAA tournament that I will be placing some money on. Look, we love our friends here at betonline.ag. They are your online sportsbook experts. Just go to that clnsmedia.com/win website and then type in that promo code CLNS50 and you're going to get a 50% cashback bonus on your first deposit. Chris, let's move on to the West region, maybe the best region in terms of basketball. Let's start with Gonzaga. Gonzaga is going to get Fairleigh Dickinson, and then they're going to get a zone matchup in round 2, be it either Syracuse or Baylor. Gonzaga has Rui Hachimura, who I'm a little bit higher on than you. I have him at number 11 on my board right now. You probably have him at like 25, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Brandon Clark, I have at number 15. You probably have a little higher than that.
Yeah, I think maybe like 12, 13-ish. I have to look.
And then Zach Norvell, like a top 60 guy. Killian Tilly, like a top 60 guy. Josh Perkins, I wouldn't be surprised to get like workouts at all.
I agree. I like Josh Perkins a little bit more than some others.
I agree. So, I mean, like, look, I don't expect Fairleigh Dickinson to give them many problems. What do you kind of, we wanted to talk about Brandon Clark a little bit earlier, where, I mean, the Brandon Clark discussion is fascinating because my problem with Brandon is I don't think he really he's a 4-5 tweener. He doesn't have the frame to really be a 5, but doesn't have the jump shot to be a 4 yet. The jump shot is improving. He's getting there. He has become better as a shooter throughout the year and has made strides as a shooter. I mean, fuck, if you watched him at San Jose State, he was shot putting that ball from like his right shoulder. But it's still not there yet. And like he needs to be a kind of legit shooter to be a 4 in the NBA.
Yeah, it's always good when you're like, man, really expectations play a role here because he's 69% from the foul line, and we're like, man, he's making some strides. Like, that's better.
But like, it's also like growth process, right? Like this is something 100%. That I talked about a couple days ago on Twitter. Like to me, like I think that Keith Smith said like, NBA teams are more willing to ignore age now whenever they're evaluating draft prospects. And I don't really think it's ever been about age. I think it's always been about finding guys that are on a positive growth trajectory. And guys that are, 21, 22, there's a reason that they've stayed in college. They've probably stagnated in some way. And you don't really want guys that are stagnating. You want guys that are getting better and better. And Brandon Clark's a guy that just keeps getting better and better and better. So, like, I'm okay with the expectations being as low as they are, if only because the starting point was as low as it was. Right? So, like, the fact that he is like a 69% free throw shooter, nice, and a 29% 3-point shooter and has made 4 threes this year, it's a fucking miracle. Like, it's unbelievable. It's great.
Yeah. No, that's certainly true. I mean, the thing with him, obviously, like, those are the places you're going to watch for improvement, but he does, like, everything else so well. Yeah. That's why he's interesting. He's super interesting because of the prospects of playing him as a small ball 5 in some level of lineups. Like, and that's really interesting. He contributes to winning in a ton of different ways. Scores efficiently, doesn't have to have a high usage, generates steals, generates blocks. Like, it takes something for statistical models or for stats people to like a player who's 22 years old, given the importance of youth in projection. And Clark is someone that people like a lot because he does everything well. And I think he poses interesting questions, like I mentioned earlier at the top of the draft, where you have a ton of players who are not the most interesting from a star equity perspective, that it may make sense for somebody just to take someone that they know is going to be good. Like, for example, like if the Lakers end up in the bottom half of the top 10, like Brandon Clark is like not a bad selection for them at all.
So I talked about this with Ben Rosales on Twitter, and I don't really agree with that because the Lakers have had a ton of success hitting on centers in the second round.
Sure.
Like, they hit Zubac. They hit Thomas Bryant. Magic Johnson's just a moron and traded them for nothing. They just drafted Mo Wagner. Like, I wouldn't want to keep using draft assets in the first round in multiple years when I have LeBron James. Like on centers or guys that you think ostensibly are going to play center, which is what you'd be doing with Brandon Clark when you already have LeBron James and Kyle Kuzma. So I don't see value there for the Lakers with Clark. Where I see him is in Minnesota. Put him next to Karl Anthony Towns and just let him fucking wreak havoc and help defense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Minnesota is obviously another great fit. And I certainly take your point with regards to the nature of replacement level centers and the Lakers for sure. But in terms of a basketball fit and like their need to compete now, he's probably better suited to do that than some of the wings that they might select in that range.
Definitely agree with that. 100% agree with that. In terms of Rui, do you want to run by like what you're worried about with Rui too?
Yeah, I mean, somebody who's on the older end of the spectrum like Brandon Clark, but doesn't necessarily check all the statistical boxes that you would want. I certainly understand that he's an improving player, but
just turned 21 for what it's worth for people.
I don't know that I'm excited about him as a self-creator offensively at the NBA level, and I'm pretty skeptical of the defense at the NBA level, and that makes it really tough to figure out where he fits in. I do think that whoever they play in the second round, if it's Syracuse or Baylor, he will feast against either of those zone defenses from the middle of them, which will be a great look for him. But just as an NBA player, I'm not super sold on what he does that translates as well.
So I am excited about him as a primary scorer. It might be your bench option, primary scorer. Sure. But I think that his intersection of quickness and power is rare. It's just not something you see normally from a prospect that is his size. He is strong as shit, and he can actually blow by you with a first step. That stuff doesn't really happen regularly. He's it's to a much, 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 much lesser extent, but it's what we see with Zion, to an extent, right? Zion has that incredible elite level intersection of quickness and power, and it allows him to become the best prospect since Anthony Davis. Rui Hachimura has that to an extent. It has diminishing value because of just, the fact that he doesn't really shoot it at a high level yet. One thing that I was told, here's a little scouting insight, that I didn't put in my coach's poll as a favor to the coach. And if coaches that are playing Gonzaga are going to listen to this, watch this on tape. When Rui is going to go into a pull-up jump shot, he has a soft dribble right before he pulls up, and teams have started noticing it. So he'll dribble, take a couple power dribbles, then we'll take a super soft one, and that's how you know he's going to pull up.
Yeah, that's certainly worth watching, and something that can be disruptive a little bit probably too.
Right, and I think that that'll be really interesting to see if anyone else picks up on that, because it's something that needs to be fixed.
Right. Yeah.
As a scorer around the basket, I think he's really good. His defense is bad, but he has the tools to be a good defender.
Sure.
The problem is that I think he's not reactive enough yet because, he's still learning American culture. He's still learning how to do everything in America. In Japan, he was never asked to defend. I say this as someone who has done a lot of work on him. I've written about him multiple times. I've talked to him multiple hours, many hours of my life. I have talked to Rui Hachimura. It's over 3 probably.
Sure.
He just genuinely was never asked to do anything on that end. So I think that there is part of it. He's still trying to figure out how exactly to close out. He's still trying to figure out how to react. I mean, it's hard to project that though.
Sure. I think that's right.
Yeah. So we're going to get Syracuse or Baylor. Baylor to me does not really have anyone that's particularly interesting from a draft perspective. Syracuse has Tyus Battle, has O'Shea Brissett, has Elijah Hughes, is kind of an interesting guy a little bit. Is there anyone that stands out to you as someone you're interested to see play Gonzaga?
Not really. I mean,
we just know so much about Tyus Battle at this stage.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I was going to say, I'm sure that we talked about Tyus Battle last year, and basically nothing has changed about what we think of him as a prospect, probably. O'Shea Brissett is probably less interesting even than he was last year. Baylor doesn't really have pros. I really enjoy watching Mekhi Mason play basketball, but, not really a pro. And from a second-round perspective, I guess it would be sort of interesting to watch Baylor's frontline guys go up against Gonzaga's frontline guys because they are big and they play hard and all of that, but I'm not super interested in watching that battle necessarily. It's not must-see TV for me.
Marquette, Murray State.
Speaking of must-see TV.
That is must-see TV. That is the game that I think everyone should watch. That is Ja Morant against Marcus Howard. They're going to get cross-matched. Marquette is going to put Sakar and him on Ja Morant, and then Murray State is going to put maybe Shaq Buchanan on Marcus Howard. Maybe they even go bigger. Maybe they go with a guy with some real size like Tevin Brown. It's not impossible, but I would imagine that they probably go with Shaq Buchanan on him and just have Shaq's athleticism and length bother the hell out of him. I was really excited to bet against Murray State when they won the OVC because I don't think the supporting cast is very good, and I figured the public would be all over Ja Morant. This is a matchup that I'm very excited to watch, but not one I am as excited to bet on because I don't really trust Marquette.
Yeah, I agree. I have a very difficult time deciding who will win this game. I'm really just here to watch Marcus Howard and Ja Morant get buckets, and that's enough for me. I don't need money on the line in this one. I just need some joy from those two.
What do you think of Marcus Howard as a prospect? Because we both have Ja Morant in the top 3, right?
Yes. Yeah, Ja Morant's obviously a top 3 prospect in the drafts. Marcus Howard is interesting given that he's such an impressive shooter, can shoot it off the bounce, can shoot it off the catch, can run off of screens and do all of that. But the obvious fact that he's 5'11" and 175 pounds makes things so much more difficult. Like the problem with Marcus Howard is the margin for error is just so slim.
It's
for
like
him
zero.
Yeah. And it's just so hard for guys who are so small to make it in the NBA. And maybe he can do it because he's such a good shooter. I don't know if he makes it in the NBA, but he will play basketball for a while somewhere and be really good and really fun wherever he ends up. And that's probably enough. But as an NBA player, I'm not the most excited just because that margin for error is so low.
Yeah, I think he's a second-round pick.
Sure.
I would take him just because he is, if you look at the numbers, he might be the best pull-up shooter since Steph Curry to enter the NBA. That's a crazy fucking statement, but it's also true. His numbers are unbelievable as a pull-up shooter. There's just no margin for error defensively. He's not a very good defender. He's not a very good distributor either, to be honest. He has the ball in his hands so much that he gets assists, but he's not making advanced pick and roll reads either.
Right.
So I don't know, man. I can't really I like him. I would like to see him succeed. He is only 19, so hey, there is still a lot of time here. Or no, he just turned 20. I'm sorry. Shout out, happy birthday, Marcus Howard. But I'm not as excited for that as I think a lot of people are.
I agree. Do you have any Sam Hauser thoughts after he showed up in the Kevin Pelton model?
I haven't read Kevin's story yet. Where did he show up?
I think he shows up top 20, top 30 statistically at least.
Sure. Sounds great.
Makes sense for someone who has a career 45% 3-point percentage.
Hot take, I think Joey Hauser is a better prospect.
Ooh. I mean, he's a little bigger. Makes some sense.
Way better athlete, too.
Yeah.
And if you notice, 43% three-point shooter this year, too. Despite the fact that he was a guy known coming in as someone that might struggle a little bit from three. He's kind of figured that out quicker than what a lot of scouts expected. I think he's Sam Hauser is an interesting prospect because he is just a fucking elite shooter. But Joey Hauser, I think, has the ability to round out the edges of Sam Hauser's game that make him kind of problematic in transition to the NBA. If Joey can even get to a slightly lower extent than Sam, I think there's a lot to be excited about.
Do you want the Hauser brothers or the Duncan brothers from Vermont in the 3-point contest?
What an outrageous transition.
People
talk to me about transitions.
Yeah, you like that?
Chris Stone is coming for the top. He's coming for the neck. Florida State against Vermont. I love Florida State. I think they have a real chance to go to the Final Four out of this region. I was asked to go on radio in Louisville with Jason Anderson, and I didn't realize this at the time, as I did it. I picked Duke, North Carolina, Virginia, and Florida State to make the Final Four.
Man, these East Coast basketball hacks.
And someone said just all SE or all ACC bias, and I was like, oh wow, yeah, ACC bias coming from the center of Hollywood, the Sun Belt of the ACC. I really like Florida State. I really think that Terrence Mann's going to play in the NBA, and I like Fiondu Kabengele as well as an interesting 2020 guy. Where are you at on those two?
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with you about Terrence Mann. Can shoot it, plays tough, has positional size. I think he probably gets a shot. Kabengele sort of, I think, is interesting because he might be able to shoot it. And if he can do that, obviously he has the size to be really, really interesting. And like you said, if he comes back for a year, I think that there's a chance that he pushes up draft boards pretty high.
My favorite potential, and look, I actually don't want to like shortchange Vermont. They have Anthony Lamb. He's like 6'5". He's a good guard. Can shoot the ball.
He's really fun.
Very fun player. Actually has a shot at the NBA. Yeah. I think that Florida State's just going to overwhelm the Duncan trio in this game, and like it could get kind of ugly for Vermont. But the best possible matchup here is Florida State against Murray State, I think.
I think that's probably right. And let Ja Morant compete against that size and athleticism.
Yeah, because Ja has played Alabama, he's played Auburn this year. Like he hasn't not gone up against athletes, but Florida State is like one of the 5 most athletic teams in college basketball. It would be really good to see that as a scouting opportunity,
as they are just about every year.
Yes. Number 6, Buffalo against one of Arizona State or St. John's. The Arizona State-St. John's game is going to be really fun tonight.
Yes, I agree.
I am very excited about that. Like, I think there is going to be just like a lot of really interesting scouting stuff there between Shamori Pons having to deal with Lugan-Stort defensively, and then probably Justin Simon on Lugan-Stort, like bothering him offensively. And then you've got Marvin Clark against like Zylan Cheatham. Like, there's actually a lot of kind of fun stuff there.
Yeah, quite a few good players in that game. I don't know that I have a preference of who gets out of that game for the next round necessarily. I really like Shamori Pons. I think that he's super interesting.
Backup point guard, which is great.
Yeah, like sort of fits in the middle of the Trae Young, Tremont Waters spectrum, I guess. A little bit bigger, but
thicker. I don't know if he's bigger.
Yeah,
just like thicker
like
and longer. Yeah.
Perfectly in the middle of 5'11" and 6'3", right? So, but yeah, I mean, he's an interesting player to me since he can shoot it off the bounce and pass it a little bit, generate steals defensively. Probably either him or Lugan-Stort's the most interesting prospect in that game.
I think Lou Dort is the most interesting prospect. You are not as high on Lou Dort, though.
Yeah, probably not.
The statistical concerns there are real. The shooting concerns there are real. He's also just an incredibly hard worker that I trust to figure it out.
Yeah. Understandable.
Number 6, they're going to play Buffalo. Buffalo has some dudes. I will say that. Buffalo has 2 guys that I think have a real shot to play in the NBA.
Yeah, that's reasonable. And Buffalo's just like, I mean, even without that, they're just a really, really good college basketball team.
Yeah, they're really well coached. They have incredible perimeter defense that's led by Devontae Jordan and C.J. Massenberg. C.J. Massenberg is one of those guys, 40% three-point shooter, really, really good defender. 6'3" off guard, so like it's very situational in terms of where he could have value. But I would also throw out Jeremy Harris, 6'7" shooter, sort of. He dealt with a bad thumb earlier this year, I believe, and that really tanked his percentages. But he can kind of attack off the dribble a little bit, has some length, a little bit interesting there.
Yeah, of note, shot it really well last year and was 8% better from the free throw line last year, so probably a better shooter than he gets credit for this year.
Yes.
And like you said, that probably gets traced back to the fact that he had a thumb injury.
Yeah. I would be interested to see Buffalo play like all of the teams in this round.
Oh, yeah. Give me Buffalo versus everybody.
Yeah, and the next team we're going to talk about is Texas Tech. Where do you have Jarrett Culver on your board?
Somewhere in the top 6, I think.
Yes, I believe that that's about right. I think I have him at 6 or 7 right now. Probably 6, I would say, realistically.
Yeah, I think I have him 6 as well.
Just not a fantastic athlete, not a fantastic shooter, but someone that is really, really young. He has made strides basically every summer from the time that he was like a junior in high school at this stage, and he's a sophomore now. So it's been like a very long 4-year growth trajectory process. He's like somewhere between 6'6" and 6'7", I think. Really passes the ball well. Solid defender, I would say. Maybe not an elite level defender, but solid level defender. Just generally, like I think that there's a lot to be excited about there.
Yeah, it sort of does a little bit of everything pretty well. I really question the shooting. I'm not super into the form. The numbers aren't great either. Had a high 3-point percentage last year, and people got excited despite shooting 65% from the free throw line.
Well, here's the thing about the shot. The shot has very clearly gotten better. The mechanics are very clearly better right now. Last year it was like a slingshot coming from the left side of his face. This year it's coming up from the middle. It has like a small little pause at the top. I would even hesitate to call it a hitch. It's just like a small little
There's
pause.
Just like a little something that's off.
Yeah, and he's taken great strides to totally revamp the jump shot. I think he will be a shooter at some point.
Yeah, I mean, if he's a shooter, he's obviously quite good.
Yes. I think he's like a starter in the NBA
pretty
at some
good.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah. Texas Tech doesn't really have anyone else. Like Tariq Owens is someone I would want to get in a G League situation. Sure. But that's really it. They play Northern Kentucky. Drew McDonald's fine, but not an NBA guy. Definitely a Europe guy. In general, I would want to see Buffalo go up against Texas Tech's defense. Texas Tech has one of the absolute best defenses in college basketball, if not the best defense in college basketball. So getting a chance to see more in the Sweet 16, like one of Nevada, Florida, or Michigan, get a chance to play them would be great.
I agree.
Nevada has Jordan Caroline, Caleb Martin, Cody Martin. Who is your favorite on that team?
Probably Caroline, but I'm not super excited about any of them.
I would agree. I think Jordan Caroline is like a late second round pick at best. I would rather have him than Cody or Caleb Martin. I would definitely get Jordan Caroline on a two-way if I could, though. Like, wouldn't even think twice about it.
That's reasonable. My concern with him is that I think that he's probably a strict power forward and needs to be able to shoot it. And if he doesn't shoot it, it's just the path is pretty hard.
Florida doesn't really have anyone prospect-wise.
Right the Jalen Hudson fall is real.
Jalen Hudson fall is real. Andrew Nembhard will be a prospect, I think. Maybe as soon as next year, 6'5" point guard who can really, really pass it, but he's not there yet.
I agree with that.
Maybe mention Noah Locke too, 6'4", like shooter, 38%, can really knock down shots on the move, but nothing crazy in this game from a prospect perspective. Michigan, Montana. Michigan has Jordan Poole, Iggy Brasdakis. I don't really think Xavier Simpson's a real NBA prospect. I don't really think that John Teskey is a real NBA prospect. And then Charles Matthews is going to play. It's very unclear how healthy Charles Matthews is right now, though.
Right.
Elite level athlete who can really, really defend at a high level, but there's just really not a whole lot there from an offensive perspective.
It makes it really difficult to be good in the NBA if you just have absolutely no jump shot.
That's right. It's 100% right.
I would be interested in watching Nevada and Michigan play in the second round. Like Michigan's great defense can maybe try to get the best out of Nevada's offense, and like that's at least interesting.
Yeah, and vice versa. Like Nevada's defense has been pretty good this year. Jordan Poole is a guy that I am intrigued by. I would like him to be good. He's not quite there yet. He would be like a 2020 first round pick for me projected right now. He just needs to I don't know if it's is it like a toughness deal? Is it
could be
like he floats on the perimeter a lot.
Yeah, it feels sort of like he's on the cusp of being good, and his flashes when he is good are really, really good. Yeah. But he's just not consistently there.
Yeah, I agree. Are you an Iggy Brasdakis guy?
Not terribly.
No, he's really bad defensively.
Fine. Yeah. Like, he can make shots, and that's really valuable, but he's not super athletic, and he's not great defensively, and that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to invest in guys that, aren't super athletic and aren't really great defensively. But when I am investing, I tend to use Robinhood. Robinhood is an investing app that allows you to buy and sell stocks, ETFs, options, and cryptos, all commission-free. While other brokerages charge up to $10 for every trade, Robinhood doesn't charge any commission fees, so you can trade stocks and keep all of your profits. Plus, there is no account minimum deposit needed to get started, so you can start investing at any level. The simple, intuitive design of Robinhood makes investing easy for newcomers and experts alike. View easy to understand charts and market data and place a trade in just 4 taps on your smartphone. You can also view stock collections such as the 100 most popular stocks. With Robinhood, you can learn how to invest in the market as you build your portfolio, discover new stocks, track your favorite companies, and get custom notifications for price movements so you never miss the right moment to invest. Robinhood is giving listeners of Game Theory a free stock like Apple, Ford, or Sprint to help you build your portfolio. Sign up at gametheory.robinhood.com. Gametheory.robinhood.com. Chris, let's move on to what is easily the worst region, maybe ever assembled for enjoyment in the history of the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I might just skip it, to be honest. Like, what game in this region do I want to watch?
So we've got Virginia against Gardner-Webb. Like, anytime Virginia plays a 16 seed now is going to be fun.
I really think they might just beat them by like 30 just to prove a point.
I think there's a chance. It's funny. They definitely gave Virginia the toughest 16 again.
Yeah.
Gardner-Webb is very clearly the best 16. They're athletic. They have the kind of weird stuff that can cause issues for Virginia athletically.
Right.
I still don't care. Where do you have DeAndre Hunter on your top 100 right now?
I think he is top 7. Number 7.
I got him at number 4.
Exactly
I'm all in on DeAndre.
All in on the DeAndre Hunter train. Yeah, it's understandable. He fits a role. He does a lot of things really well. Defends on the ball well. Shoots it a bit. I certainly get it from that perspective. Maybe he's a better comparison with somebody like we were talking about with the Cam Reddish like star equity thing versus DeAndre Hunter, who probably doesn't have a ton of it, but is likely a really good role player.
I will just say, like, DeAndre Hunter is one of those guys that has been on a positive growth trajectory basically every year since he was in high school. He has gotten considerably better at something every single year. His body improved from his redshirt freshman year at Virginia. He improved drastically as a defender last year. This year, he's improved as a shooter, as a ball handler, as an offensive player. Like, he's continued to make these leaps in the way that you like to see guys make leaps. I don't think he's a star at the next level, but like there is some percentage chance that he's a star at the next level, I think.
Yeah, maybe some, but probably not a super high one. That's
right.
Okay, like he's probably going to be good.
Like, I think Cam Reddish probably has a higher percentage of star power, but like I'm just not ruling it out. That's all I'm saying. I'm not ruling it out. Next, let's talk about Ty Jerome. Any interest in Ty Jerome?
I like Ty Jerome quite a bit. Just somebody who can obviously shoot it as well as he can, especially off of the move and coming off screens and stuff like that, is I think somebody who's probably been a little bit underrated in the past from in that archetype. And so, I have some interest.
Yeah, like late first, early second round pick for me, for sure. Kyle Guy, Mamadi Diakite, any of these guys on Virginia?
I mean, they're both kind of interesting. Guy for similar reasons to Jerome in that he's a good shooter. Diakite is a really good defender, but probably doesn't bring enough offensively to the table.
Jack Salt?
He sets some great screens.
There's like so I call these guys the Fletcher McGee All-Stars. Guys who very much look like their name. Like, Fletcher McGee is the most Fletcher McGee looking dude you'll ever see in your life. Jack Salt is the most Jack Salt looking guy that you've ever seen. Like, you see Jack Salt without knowing Jack Salt's name, you just go, oh, that guy's name is Jack Salt for sure. Like, I don't need to know. Like, I know that his name is Jack Salt. I don't need to look it up.
I agree. Brady Manick fits that role too.
That's a good one.
Now that he looks like budget Larry Bird.
Yeah, I'm in on Brady Manick being in this mix. Virginia is gonna, I think, blow through Gardner-Webb. I think they're probably going to blow through either of Ole Miss or Oklahoma. I will say, if Mississippi wins that game, they do have the athletic guards to at least like cause problems for Virginia.
Sure.
I think Breein Tyree, Terrence Davis, Devontae Shuler, the best prospect in Oklahoma. Mississippi is definitely Terrence Davis. I think.
I agree.
Maybe long term, it's Jamal Bieniemy at Oklahoma if he can take a leap as a very, very young player, but Terrence Davis is really, really good.
Yes, he is really good. Kind of a fringe prospect probably in that he still commits a decent number of turnovers. He's not particularly great efficiency-wise, but he is really good.
No real other interest in this game. I don't think we need to belabor that.
Do you remember when people thought Brady Manick was an NBA prospect because Trae Young got him open shots? That was fun.
I don't remember that, to be honest. I didn't really realize that was a thing.
Oh, yeah, that was a thing briefly.
So Wisconsin-Oregon is going to be the most unwatchable game of the first round, I think.
You forgot about Baylor-Syracuse, but that's okay.
Yeah, but like there'll at least be some interesting shot making in that game, like with Tyus Battle and
sure.
Like Makai Mason. That's a good question. Does Tyus Battle play? I hope. Wisconsin, Oregon is going to be Wisconsin playing like hard man-to-man defense against an Oregon team that struggles to score, and then Oregon playing really, really tough physical zone defense against a Wisconsin team that just doesn't have the athleticism to score against them.
Yep. That sounds right.
The under in that game can't be low enough.
Yeah. That's true.
Are you an Ethan Happ guy?
Not terribly, no. The total lack of a jump shot and improvement on it over 4 years is like not exciting. Plus, I think he's closer to like 6'7" than 6'8", and I just don't think he fits well at the NBA level.
I think Ethan Happ's like probably 6'9", 6'9.5" maybe. He's big.
He did not look 6'9" when I saw him in person last year. I'll say that.
No. I don't think that. Yeah, he has some interest because he can play in short roles, but he's probably not really an NBA player. Are you out on Brad Davison? I am out on Brad Davison entirely.
Oh yeah, definitely out. What, didn't he like slide under someone really obviously?
Yes, like he does this like
pretty out.
Borderline dirty stuff, and
yeah,
just like any dude who makes his name off of taking charges. Like I'm out on that as a lifestyle. I don't want that.
The joy of Buzzcut Brad.
Yeah, I do not want that. Like that is not something I'm interested in. That is not something that like no. Fuck that.
Yeah.
This sucks. Yep. No, we're out on that. Oregon has Liu King and Kenny Wooten. Anyone there of interest?
The best thing that I'll say about Liu King is that when I saw him in high school, he played on the same team on EYBL as Cam Reddish, and I thought in that game he was much better than Cam Reddish. But Cam Reddish likes to float sometimes. So
yeah, I mean Liu King will at least play hard all the time. Yep. Cam doesn't really do that. My problem with Liu King is he has a 1-2 assist rate to turnover rate.
Yeah.
And he's like a 35% 3-point shooter. And honestly, I think that's high. Like you watch his mechanics, I don't think he's that good.
Yeah, I think he's also pretty old for this class. And so there's some, concern there. I think he's already 20.
He turns 20 in April. So yeah. Kenny Wooten, any thoughts there?
He's athletic, blocks some shots, a little bit undersized, but that's okay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he actually moves his feet well on the perimeter. Like, can finish way above the basket. Not a 2019 prospect, but maybe one day.
Sure.
Let's move on. Kansas State against UC Irvine. Shout out Kansas State breaking the streak.
Yep. Streak is over. RIP the streak. Now I don't have to hear about it every year. Very excited.
Barry Brown. So Dean Wade, it looks like, is out for the first week.
I think that's correct. Yes.
I think that Bruce Weber said maybe the NCAA tournament, but let's just start by saying the opening weekend. Barry Brown is fine.
Fine. He's
a good defender, good driver, probably a guy that spends some time in the G League and then maybe gets a quick sniff of the NBA.
Yeah, you mentioned Jordan Murphy as somebody like bigs would probably not want to work out against. I would suggest that Barry Brown is perhaps that for guards.
Yeah,
just because he will hound them defensively.
So, I do know that a couple of NBA agents listen to this. If you are an NBA agent listening to this and you end up with a client that is potentially supposed to be in a workout with Barry Brown, make sure that client calls in sick that day. Because that is just not going to end well. Straight up. Yeah. That will be bad. Are you a Xavier Sneed guy?
Not terribly. He's somewhat interesting because he shoots it okay and has some size, but I'm not going out of my way to cape for Xavier Sneed, no.
No, I'm with you there. Good defender, really, really good defender, but I don't know what he does offensively. Next, UC Irvine here. No one really with Irvine that is particularly interesting in this pod. I mean, this. I think this has a real chance to be a 12-13 second round game.
Oh yeah, it definitely could be.
UC Irvine is genuinely a great basketball team. They just don't have prospects, for the purpose of this podcast. Russ Turner, to me, is one of the absolute best coaches in college basketball that nobody knows. 40.6% 2-point percentage against defensively, and they hold teams to 33% of their 3-point field goal attempts percentage against. So, they don't allow many threes. And when teams get into the lane, they don't allow a high percentage of twos to be made. It's unbelievably impressive.
Yeah, that's another game where you can just smash the under, probably.
Yeah, I bet on Irvine the minute that line came out. Literally, I was refreshing my monitor once I saw online that like it was opening at I think 6.5 or something. I was like, please. And I got it at 6 before it dropped. I swear to God, I think that line's going to get down to like 3.
Yeah, especially with no Dean Wade now.
Yeah, exactly. Like now that Dean Wade is like expected to be out. So I'm just going to look to see what it is right now. Can you guys hear my cat in the background, by the way? Just like losing its mind. So that's the foster cat. So I've gone on the College Basketball Talk podcast and talked about this. So that's our foster cat. By the way, if you're interested in a foster cat, he's genuinely, I mean this in all ways. Like he is the nicest cat in the world. Like he is so sweet. We're not going to keep him just because we wanted to give him a break from the foster shelter. But like he is the nicest cat in the world. And if you live in the Los Angeles area and are looking for a cat, you will not do better than this cat. He's just a little bit loud. Just a little bit loud right now. So let's move on. Let's talk about this next little 3-6 group here. Villanova St. Mary's is a game I'm excited to watch. I've already bet on St. Mary's for what it's worth. Are you an Eric Paschal guy?
No, not really. Like, I kind of get it that he can defend a little bit in multiple positions, shoots a little bit better than he should for his position, and seems to be a sufficient athlete for the NBA, but like, again, like just one of those guys who's going to be competing for a spot that only has a small number of spots, and that's really difficult.
Yeah, so I think he's going to go in the first round.
Sure.
He's a guy that every time he's gone to like these summer camps and like workouts is absolutely really, really impressed NBA executives. I think that once he gets into workouts, teams are going to see, oh, hey, this guy is a fucking outrageous athlete. And he can knock down shots from the perimeter and do a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, I definitely get it. And the reasons to be excited, it's just, man, it's such a hard position to battle at.
So do you think he's a 4 or do you think he's a 5?
Man, I think he's like probably going to be best as a 5. You think he can play the 4 though?
I do. So I think that he's the kind of guy you're going to want to throw against like LeBron, Giannis, like all these like big, oversized, like powerful, physical ball handlers like Ben Simmons, like these guys. And that's a really underrated guy to have in the NBA right now. It's kind of like how Marcus Morris is going to play in the NBA until he's like 34 or something, in large part because he can match up physically with those dudes. It's rare to find someone that is 6'8", 6'7" in Pascal's case, let's say, 250 pounds and has actual like explosiveness and power. That actually like is a super interesting thing to get.
Yeah, that's reasonable. That makes him a little bit more interesting when you put it that way, I think. That's fair.
Yeah. Phil Booth? Come on.
Phil Booth's interesting. Phil Booth guy. Like he can get buckets and get to his spots pretty well. He competes hard.
I'm a Phil Booth guy as like a backup off guard.
Okay. Yeah, I don't hate it. I'm okay with that.
Knocks down threes at a high level. He's a gamer. Really defends at a high level. Passes the ball at a pretty high level for a guy that's going to play as like a secondary ball handler. If I was Philadelphia, I would be working my ass off to get Phil Booth in either as a late second round pick or as a two-way guy.
Yeah, that makes some sense. I like that idea.
St. Mary's, come on. Tell me you're a Jordan Ford guy.
I don't know that I'm super excited about anybody on their team from an NBA perspective.
So there's like some interest there. So Jordan Ford is a 43% three-point shooter, 80% foul shooter who can get to his pull-up jumper at just about any time. And this has been good going back to last year when he was a 44% three-point shooter, 61 true shooting percentage guy. He is just a very legit, I think, creator with the ball in his hands. And I would also bring up Malik Fitz as like a sort of interesting guy. 6'8", 235 pounds, tough, physical, can shoot a little bit from distance. Maybe after his junior year next year is a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely reasonable for him, I think. Certainly someone who fills up the stat sheet and does a lot of different things well, which is good.
Yeah, if this gets to plus 200, I will be taking St. Mary's money line. It's at like 175 right now. Purdue against Old Dominion. Old Dominion has a couple of guards in Ahmad Carver and BJ Stith that I think are really good. Probably not NBA players, but probably Portsmouth guys. Obviously, Purdue has Carson Edwards and not really a whole lot else. Is there anything interesting there to you?
Not terribly. I'm not a big Carson Edwards fan.
I agree with you. Also not a big Carson Edwards guy after this season. Didn't really take the leap that we were hoping as a distributor. Was a mess in terms of just his efficiency in Big Ten play. I like the athleticism. I like the fact that he runs hard and plays hard pretty much the entire game, but I'm just not there. Honestly, I think we can move on to the next matchup, which is Cincinnati-Iowa, which means I think we can move on to the next matchup.
I was going to say, we may have undersold the worst first-round game by forgetting Cincinnati and Iowa play.
Yeah, I've been saying this like on every podcast I've done, but like I am more excited to see which one of Fran McCaffrey or Mick Cronin just tries to take off his skates and stab the other one, like Happy Gilmore style. Like that's what I want. More, I don't care. I want coaches' cams more than I want to watch this game.
Yes, absolutely.
There are no real prospects in this game. Jerron Cumberland's fine. Sure. Maybe a shooter. He needs to be able to consistently knock down threes, though. He was 39% on 200 attempts this season. So that was a good sign, but definitely a bully ball kind of guy. Iowa, I don't think Tyler Cook is like good. Luka Garza can't defend in space. Joe Wieskamp, actually, I am going to bring up Joe Wieskamp. Joe Wieskamp, I think, is an interesting like 2020 or 2021 prospect.
Sure.
6'6", not a whole lot of length, but can really shoot it. He competes defensively. He's a good athlete. I'm here for the Wieskamp hive.
Go for it. I'm sorry we got stuck on Iowa-Cincinnati, everybody.
Yeah. Tennessee against Colgate. So let's talk about Grant Williams, because Grant Williams is one of the more divisive prospects this year. Are you a Grant Williams guy?
I am a Grant Williams guy.
So explain to me why you're a Grant Williams guy.
I think he's a really good defender, has good length, really smart basketball player, blocks shots despite not having the most size, and perhaps the thing that like kind of swings me the most is that I think that there's a good chance that he ends up shooting it okay.
So I agree that he's going to end up shooting it okay. Like I just said earlier with Eric Paschal, I think there is a lot of value in the way that a player who is like 240 pounds, 6'7", long arms, everything like that. I think there's a lot of value in getting that kind of player right now. I am a little bit worried about the jumper, but I think I agree with you that he'll shoot it at some point. I just don't think he has like the athleticism to be anything more than like a sixth man best, you know?
Maybe. I think that there's a reasonable chance that he's like a lower end starter who doesn't take up a lot of offensive possessions or anything like that. And when he does, he can pass it a little bit and do, some unique things there.
I like the fact that he can pass it. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Tough finisher inside, tough floater game. There's a lot of value there. Admiral Schofield, I think Grant Williams is a better defender than Schofield.
I agree.
Which is
I like
kind
Grant
of
Williams more than Schofield.
I think they're pretty close as prospects. Schofield, I think, fits better from like the traditional 3-and-D archetype because he can actually shoot it, I think, whereas Grant Williams, that's the big question is, will he shoot it?
Sure.
Schofield is slightly worse defensively. Like if you watch the game against PJ Washington, that was not great. That was not great for Admiral.
Yeah. But he's interesting and pretty
good. Are you a
good.
Jordan Bone guy? I keep getting asked about Jordan Bone.
No, not really.
Yeah, like not a guy that definitely a guy. I'll say this, like a guy that has interest for next year. Like I will have him on my top 100 going into next year's draft.
Sure.
He is right now an 82% foul shooter. He does finish inside reasonably well. He's at 35% from three. 6'3", can actually pass the ball a little bit. He's just not consistent enough.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we should be a little bit higher on him than we're letting on here, but just not someone to get super excited over, I think. Yeah,
I'm with that. Colgate, are you a Rapalis Ivanauskas guy?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on. North Carolina against Iona in this game. Did you see the clip of Mike Francesa just like having Tim Klutz from Iona on his show and be like, well, you guys are going to get your fucking ass kicked. It was like amazing. No. He just went like, well, North Carolina, they basically do what you want to do. They want to get up and down the floor. They want to, get out in the secondary break. They're just way better than you. Like this was the worst possible matchup for you. How do you feel?
I have been told this is the region of pace, so I am excited.
Yeah, they will play fast. These two teams will play fast. Let's talk about North Carolina. Have you jumped fully on board with the Kobe White hive like I have?
I don't know that I'm fully on board, but I do like Kobe White quite a bit. The pull-up jumper is real, and that's super valuable.
Kobe White or Cam Reddish?
Ooh.
See, I think that was a great E40 sound effect, by the way.
I don't know. Probably Cam Reddish right now, but you could persuade me, I guess.
Yeah, Kobe White is really interesting. He's really, really interesting. He is one of the guys where I think you could look at it and go, oh, this is one of the guys that you could say, hey, I'm going to take him over Cam Reddish.
Yeah. I wish he didn't turn the ball over as much as he does, and I wish there was a little bit more there defensively.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he's a disaster defender, but I don't think he's great there. Are you a Cam Johnson guy like I am?
I am a Cam Johnson guy. I really like Cam Johnson.
I think he's very clearly a top 30 player in this class.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable. Somebody who just is a knockdown shooter, has variety to his jump shot in ways that other guys don't. Gonna fit in and play a really nice role, I think.
Are you a Luke May guy?
No, not really. He's fine, but not really.
Shout out Luke May, who will be playing Frightened Inmate number 2 in some sort of acting production in the near future. I don't know. You want to move on from North Carolina? Is there anyone else to talk about?
I mean, I still believe in Nasir Little probably a little more than everybody else does, but other than that,
let's. Where would you take Nasir Little?
I don't know. I'd probably still take him in the lottery and just be really unexcited about it. I know.
What are your concerns about Nasir? Let's start there.
The feel is not great. I think that there's a lot of questions about where he fits defensively. I think that he's struggled to score at a rate that we probably thought he could score at, especially against college-level players. And that's a worry, given that, that should be a strength of his, given his frame.
The jumper this year has been a little bit strange to me. I expected it to be better.
Is bad.
I expected it to be better, just kind of given what we thought that he had a chance to be. We thought he had a chance to be an actual shooter who could get to his pull-up game, and he just hasn't even been remotely that.
I agree.
I still have him as a top 20 guy.
Sure.
That says more about this draft than Nasir Little, though.
I think that's correct.
In their pod, they have Utah State and Washington. Utah State, are you a Neemias Queta guy?
He's interesting. I don't know that I'm super on the bandwagon, but anybody who blocks shots as well as he does is certainly interesting, especially at his age.
I will say Sports Illustrated just put him in their 2019 first round.
I mean, sure. I guess, maybe.
I will say I have yet to talk to an NBA executive that is excited to that extent about Neemias Queta.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, I really like Neemias Queta. I've been talking about him basically since, honestly, November. He is really, really interesting from a prospect perspective. Really, really good rim protector. One of the 5 best rim protectors in all of college basketball, I think. Really, really good defensive rebounder. This year, Utah State has the 4th best 2-point percentage against and the 5th best defensive rebounding rate. A lot of that is Neemi. A lot of that is Neemi Queta. Just no offensive game yet. There's just nothing there. It's really hard to get excited about that. Sam Merrill, shooter on the move. He wrecked Lou Dort earlier this year, and Lou Dort is a really good defender. Go back and watch Utah State and watch Sam Merrill just run off of screens and make Lou Dort look silly. It was pretty fun. Yeah. Probably not a real prospect, but maybe in 2020. He's not 6'5", what he's listed at either. Matisse Thybulle. The Matisse Thybulle conversation is one of the funniest things I think I have seen, because I've never seen a defensive player get this much attention in my life. Man.
Now that steal and block rates matter, get on board.
I love Matisse Thybulle. I think he is such a fun prospect. He's a great, dude. I've never heard anyone say a bad word about him as a human being. You go back and watch the tape from his sophomore season when they played man-to-man. It was, not fantastic.
Yeah, that's a reasonable concern.
He was the best man-to-man defender on that team that was very clearly the worst high major defensive team in the country that year.
Right.
But he was, not great on that end either.
Yeah, that's a fair concern to have. You obviously hope that over the last 2 years he's improved. Certainly it seems from a feel and instinct perspective, he's there. Size and length too. And I think, it wouldn't surprise me if he's somebody who just like shoots it really well during workouts, and that causes him to move up draft boards because that 3-and-D fit is really good.
And he's more skilled offensively than what I think he shows. He can attack closeouts. He can actually knock down shots. He hasn't done that like to a terrific extent this year, but I think he can shoot it. Big hands, like can actually go up and really rise up and dunk off of cuts and in transition. There's a lot there. I think he's actually like a pretty good prospect. Are you a Jalen Noel guy?
He's interesting, but probably more for next year than this year.
I agree with you. I think he is a lot more interesting than what he gets credit for, though. Like, I do have him as a legit top 100 prospect right now, and I don't feel like many other people do.
Yeah, that's fair. I think if I probably ranked down that far, he would be somewhere in that range.
Yeah, like, I honestly think he might be like a top, 70 prospect, the more I watch him. He's really, really good at getting to his shot, and he's knocking down threes now. Like, he is actually hitting threes.
That is very much the piece that's most exciting about him, for sure.
Yeah. Either of these two teams playing North Carolina, which one interests you more? Probably Washington, right?
Yeah, probably Washington, just because I think that their zone creates some interesting matchups, but man, do I hate admitting that I would rather watch a zone defense.
Washington this season. Shout out Washington for some bid collusion and some seed collusion on last Sunday, or last Saturday, I guess it was. Losing that game to Oregon. Do you know what it did for Washington?
Nothing, right? Or moved them up.
It gave them their first win over an NCAA tournament team because they had beaten Oregon earlier in the year. That is the only NCAA tournament team they had beaten this year.
Shout out to Pac-12.
Pac-12 is a disaster. It is so bad.
So bad.
Auburn and New Mexico State. Chuma Okike is probably Auburn's most interesting guy. I am like some people are like throwing him like in the first round conversations, and like NBA people I talked to like have said like, oh yeah, like he might be like a late first round pick this year if he would decide to declare. I
have like early second.
I'm not quite there with that. Why are you a Chuma Okike guy?
Positional size, sort of. He's not as big as Pascal or Grant Williams, but he is bigger for that position, weighs 230 right now. Checks the steal and block rate boxes in ways that you would like, and has been an improved shooter this year.
But, like, they have him match up. Like, it's kind of like, we'll talk about Taylor Horton Tucker, like, later on. And it's kind of similar to that for me, where, like, people talk about Okike as this, like, awesome multi-positional defender who can do a lot of different stuff. I think he's just kind of a big defender right now. I don't think he's actually like a great defender.
Yeah, that's reasonable, I suppose. But like, even if all he does his best is bring you a lot of help defense, if he's creating defensive events, that's still pretty valuable.
It's valuable to an extent. Yeah, I would agree with that. Like, he does have great steal rate, great block rate. Like, he does have, like, he knows how to use his length. He knows how to get into passing lanes. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not like shitting on Chuma Okike. Like, I have him as a top 60 prospect. But like, I don't like I said, like, it's more like the late first round talk where I'm like,
sure.
Like, he's just limited. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he's more like an early second guy for me than a late first.
Yeah, like 38% from three this year. Obviously a good like spacer out to the corners specifically. Yeah, he's fine. Anyone else here? No, not really.
No, not really. Right?
No. New Mexico State also, I would say, doesn't really have anyone. New Mexico State's a good basketball team, but it's mostly because Chris Jans is a really good coach. Like
really good coach, yeah.
Chris, I'm sorry that we have to do this.
We can just skip Kansas. They're terrible.
I'm gonna give you the floor. I'm just gonna allow you to discuss Kansas right now.
I mean, they're all bad. Like, I don't know what else. Like, Kansas is bad and not fun to watch play basketball. So I don't really know what there's to say. And like, none of their players are exactly good NBA prospects. Devon Dotson's somewhat interesting. I think that Devon Dotson can shoot it and should be way more willing to shoot it.
I agree with you that I think Devon Dotson is the most interesting prospect on Kansas.
Yeah.
Dedrick Lawson has a fun statistical year.
Yeah.
He still has a negative assist to turnover rate. It has no athletic explosiveness. Like, he's a really good tough shot maker, but there's just not enough there like to get any sort of separation.
If people don't think Zion gets lift on his jump shot, they should watch Dedrick Lawson shoot.
Yeah, it's not great. It's absolutely not great. Quentin Grimes?
Yeah, man, he exists. I'll tell you that Kansas fans are really hoping for that Malik Newman breakout. That's not coming, folks.
Do you think Quentin Grimes should go back to Kansas? Because this is something that I brought up and got a lot of folks in Kansas, including the coaching staff, apparently, not very happy with me. I go back and forth on it. Like, I think it just depends on what Quentin Grimes wants his career to be.
Yeah.
But, like, where do you fall on this? Like, you've watched, like, I've watched probably like 12 to 14 Kansas games this year. You've probably watched like all of them, I would imagine, or most of them, right?
Far less than in the past, if we're being honest.
But still more than I have.
Yes, but probably still more than you. I don't think that Quentin Grimes gets a lot of value out of transferring. He would add a year to his time frame. I'm not sure that it's going to like develop him significantly more to do that.
Let me throw this at you though. So like Tate Martell just got a waiver in football. Like everyone is getting waivers to transfer.
Oh, do I think he could get a waiver?
Yeah,
I don't know, maybe.
I'm not saying like evaluate the potential
if he
for a
could.
waiver. I'm saying if he could get a waiver, because like everyone is getting waivers right now to be able to transfer.
I don't know. I'm still not sure that serves his purposes very well. Like, I think that if you're him, you're sort of hoping you're on that Wayne Selden trajectory at this point.
So I think that's right. But like,
yeah.
Quentin Grimes also like came in hoping to, it seemed like, be a lead guard, right?
Yeah, I certainly think he expected to have the ball a little bit more than he does. And I will say this for Grimes. I think he's like an actually good passer.
I think he's a good passer. I just think he doesn't really get doesn't really have the handle to like break down the defense and get into the lane, and
he's not nearly athletic enough.
Yeah, like I thought he was more athletic than he is. Like I knew he wasn't like an elite athlete, but he is like I can't tell if the lack of handle like kind of holds back the explosiveness or what it is, because he's not a great athlete.
I agree.
So I'm not really sure what to do with Quentin Grimes. I think he should definitely return to college.
Yeah.
If he can get a transfer to go somewhere like immediately and can get a waiver, I think I probably would, because I just would want to have the ball in my hands more than what he will.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I get it from that perspective. I'm just not sure that does enough for him. I think it's worth leaving like probably a better coaching situation.
Assuming Bill's back. Shout out the Chicago Bulls rumor.
Yeah, shout out the Bulls rumor, which he has already denied, but yeah,
categorically. Oh my God.
Yeah, anytime the rest of Kansas is bad.
Anytime you can get the guy who has been played by Matthew McConaughey in a movie about gambling to create a Chicago Bulls rumor about Bill Self, you gotta just roll with it.
Just go for it.
No, nothing on Ogbai.
Ochai Agbaji? Yeah, he's not an NBA player. People should stop. I mean, maybe he is in like 2 years, but please just stop.
Yell at Bill Self. Bill Self started this. Like, he's the one who brought this up.
I get it. But, like, man, he commits 3 times as many turnovers as assists. Like, his feel is horrific, and he's not a good shooter. So, like, what are we doing here?
Is Marcus Garrett a better prospect?
I get that Ochai Agbaji is the only player on Kansas who can dunk, but, like, come on.
Is Marcus Garrett a better prospect than Ochai Agbaji?
No, probably not, but, like...
Marcus Garrett at least really defends.
Marcus Garrett does defend. He's a really, really good defender.
Like he is an elite level defender.
Yeah. If Marcus Garrett could do anything on offense, he would be interesting. Yeah. But he can't. He literally cannot do anything on offense.
Okay, let's stop making Chris sad. I've already bet on Northeastern money line in this game. Vasa Pushika.
Yeah, he's gonna get buckets.
So they play 4 guards. They shoot a ton of threes. Those are the kind of games that have give Kansas problems this year.
Yes. Kansas's real hope is that Devon Dotson or Grimes, who's like actually okay defensively, or Garrett can handle taking Pusika out of the game.
I don't know how much faith I have in that, to be honest.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
We'll see. We'll
sure.
See. It's very possible that like Kansas wins this game just because there is variance in 3-point shooting. But
right.
Like this is the kind of team that gives Kansas problem.
Yes, I agree.
Another potential 12-13 game, like very real potential 12-13.
Yeah, it's in play.
Iowa State.
Yep.
Fascinating mix of prospects. Where are you at on Talen Horton-Tucker? Because NBA executives that I talk to continue to be very in on him, and I am not there.
I think that he has flashes where he looks elite, and when you combine that with the fact that he's one of the youngest prospects in the class, that creates a lot of leeway for him. But I'm not sure that the package comes together as well as the highlights do. And so I'm probably somewhere in the middle on him relative to NBA folks, in your opinion.
So 49% true shooting percentage, 31% from three, 62% from the foul line. Doesn't really finish all that well inside. And the big thing is, like, everyone talks about him as this multi-positional defender. And, like, he's not good defensively. Like, he is not good defensively. We should just say that.
But have you considered that he has a 7'1" wingspan?
Like, I get it. I understand why people are enthused by this. But, like, he's not good defensively. Like, and that is the whole appeal of him, is being good defensively.
The fact that he's like 18 and change.
Right. But like the whole appeal of him is that he can be a role player that can defend and play on both ends of the floor.
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah, I get that you're out. I'm not super in, just to be clear.
Like I have him as like a top 60 prospect, like, because the age is interesting, the ball skills are interesting.
Right.
Like, he rebounds the basketball. He can pass the ball a little bit. He can handle the ball, like, at a high level.
Yes.
I just, like, there's nothing. It's the finishing, the shooting, and the defense. Like, that's how you become an NBA player now, as a role player.
These are the things that fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, none of that's there yet.
I agree.
Tyrese Halliburton is my favorite prospect on Iowa State.
Now we're talking real prospects.
Why? So I don't think he should leave. I will say that.
Sure.
I think he's a lot more limited than what, like, stats only scouting will give you.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, look, the jump shot is a 6'5" version of almost Jaren Jackson Jr.'s jump shot. And the free throw percentage is mediocre, and I'm not entirely sure that he's actually going to be able to shoot it. But the basketball
I think
IQ
he can shoot it on the catch. I will say that.
Sure, it's just like painfully slow.
Right.
But the basketball IQ stuff is really high, as reflected by a good assist-turnover ratio, good block rate, good steal rates, can score efficiently inside, is an effective cutter, and can, find ways to contribute offensively. But really just someone who's exciting from an age plus statistical profile perspective, where you think, like, this guy has all of the markers that have previously been suggested as things that will cause growth in the future, and that's why you should be excited about him.
Yes, and, like, I am excited about him. Look, I have him as a top 50 prospect right now. I just also know that there are people out there that have him as, like, a top 30 prospect, and I think you're one of them.
I would have him at the back end of the top 20, probably 28.
See, like, I would want to wait to see how his body develops, and I would want to wait to see how his handle develops, because he's a lot less interesting if he's an off guard.
That's fair. But probably somebody that I'm more interested in taking a risk on, I guess, is a high upside play than some of the other guys.
I think that's totally reasonable, too. Like, I think there's a real chance he's next year's Jarrett Culver.
Sure, that's reasonable.
One guy that I like more than most people is Nick Weiler-Babb. I think Nick Weiler-Babb plays in the NBA.
I've been on the Nick Weiler-Babb train since last year. Like, he just does everything, does it pretty well, isn't getting as much time on the ball this year as he did last year, but, like, is a competent playmaker.
But, like, I like that fact. Like, I like the fact that they have moved him off the ball and shown that he can have the same impact on the game by playing off the ball.
Yeah. No, I like Nick Weiler-Babb a lot. I wish he wasn't 23 years old, but
I think he is genuinely, by the time, like, kids end up returning to school, going to be a top 60 prospect.
Dang. Yeah, that might be a little higher than I am, but, I would certainly consider him top 75 for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be close. He might end up like just on the outside of that, but, like, it's going to be really close.
Yeah.
Because I think I have him at, like, 82 or something right now, like, in that range. Marial Shayok.
Sure. My favorite thing about the Big 12 this year is that the conference's leading scorer was a Virginia transfer. So
yeah, who, like, barely started at Virginia.
Right.
And Shayok's gotten better. Like, he really shoots it now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I say that as a joke. Like, he has clearly gotten a lot better as a basketball player.
And he has the length still. It's funny. There's a tweet from me in, like, 2015 that says, like, Marial Shayok is a guy that, like, long-term I would bet on to be an NBA player. And, like, it has gone well, like to an extent, but there's just a lot missing there.
Sure. I agree. Somebody who might get a shot, but not somebody I'm super excited about.
Yeah. And I don't want to say accidentally, I kind of did it consciously, but I dropped Lindell Wigginton off of my top 100. I probably should not have done that. I do think he's a top 100 prospect.
That's fair. Yeah. He's probably a top 100 prospect, but somebody who has really come down over the course of the season.
What do you think it says about Iowa State as a team that they have 5 top 100 prospects on their team and are 23-11 and lost, I want to say, 6 of their final 8 regular season games?
Well, most of those prospects are bad at defense, so it probably says that.
That's good. That's a good point. We'll blame the defense. Yeah. We'll blame the defense for sure. Do we have to talk about Ohio State?
I mean, you can if you want to, but you're welcome to skip your alma mater.
I think I will pass. This was always a growth year for Ohio State. Like the fact that they're in the NCAA tournament when their best player is Caleb Wesson. Like, just give Chris Holtman Coach of the Year now.
Yeah, Chris Holtman is great.
Chris Holtman is so good.
That's our Ohio State take. Chris Holtman is wonderful.
Like Chris Holtman. So Chris Holtman has like a $20 million buyout or something like that. Like it is an astronomical number from, I don't know if he signed an extension after last year, or if it was just like the 7-year contract that he signed originally. It's like a $20 million buyout. If it wasn't, I would say UCLA should hire him. Just like straight up.
Yeah.
Like he is an unbelievable basketball coach. An unbelievable
really
basketball
good
coach. They have no prospects though. I think Luther Muhammad is maybe their most interesting long term, and he's not a great prospect.
Yes.
Houston, Georgia State has a matchup that I'm looking forward to, but I don't know that I would call it like a sexy matchup.
Yeah, that's fair. I enjoy watching DeMarcus Simons play.
Yeah, DeMarcus Simons is like a fun, weird basketball player.
He had that stretch last year in the tournament too, where he just went insane versus Cincinnati.
It was hilarious. So I bet on his over point total. It was 15.5, I think, against Cincinnati. And he dropped 16 in the first 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, this is great. This is a win. And he didn't score again, I think.
Yeah.
I was like,
he had that insane 10 minutes, and then I was like, okay, well, we're done here.
Yeah. Who is Houston's best NBA prospects? I feel like there are a few different names you could throw out.
I don't know. I mean, Corey Davis is interesting because he can get and make his own shots.
I think it's Corey Davis. I think I would agree with you. And the reason I would say it is defensively. That dude is a motherfucker on defense.
Yeah,
like
that's fair.
He is awesome on defense. Galen Robinson is like sort of kind of interesting to me. Nate Hinton is long term sort of kind of interesting to me because he's 6'6" and can shoot it. He's already he's still 19. I was going to say, I think he might be a little bit older for a freshman, but, still 19 years old, rebounds the basketball, shoots it a little bit. Like, there's at least something there.
Sure.
I've heard a couple people bring up DeJon Jarreau. I can't really get behind that right now, to be honest. But
yeah.
I don't know. Like, sure.
It is not hard to see why. Steal plus block rate plus 3-point percentage, and that's why people are excited.
Like, he's a crazy athlete.
But he's also a career 66% free throw shooter, and so he's probably not actually a good shooter, which means he's not a very interesting prospect.
Yeah, he's taken 31 threes this year.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Sorry, folks.
DeMarcus Simons, though, great athlete, like power athlete, can get into the lane. Just not much else there, I don't think.
Never really figured out the shooting piece.
Yeah, or like the efficiency part. Sure. Wofford Seton Hall has one of the most fun, shooter player matchups because it's Miles Powell against Fletcher McGee.
Yep.
Are you a Miles Powell or Fletcher McGee guy?
I mean, I'm a Fletcher McGee fan. How can you not be?
Yeah, I think Miles Powell is actually better at basketball than he is, though.
Yeah, but what about Fletcher McGee's shooting?
He will literally shoot. So for people who haven't watched Wofford yet this season,
he'll shoot everything.
Fletcher McGee will come off of a screen, genuinely have his feet still pointed toward the sideline.
Yeah.
Catch the ball, raise up, readjust in midair, and shoot. And sometimes make them. He's
a career 43% 3-point shooter on 1,000 attempts. There's just no question he's a great shooter, and he can do it off of movement. Would it surprise you if he gets a shot to play in the NBA? Probably.
Oh, I think he's definitely going to get a shot to play in the NBA. There's zero question. He will get it.
At least I think he should.
In the NBA. I also just think Miles Powell is better than he is.
That's fine. Why? Sam hates fun, everybody.
Like, they're both shooters. Like, they both shoot a ton off of movement. Miles
that's true.
Is a better pull-up shooter. He can actually create his own shot. He's way more athletic. Like, Miles Powell, by the way, came into college at like 240 pounds or something, and like is actually athletic now, and like has worked his ass off on his game to get there. I will bet on. I don't know that I'll bet on him being an NBA player. I don't know that either of those guys are NBA players, but like I am happy with Miles Powell.
Sure.
Last game here, Chris. Kentucky against Abilene Christian.
Oh, yeah.
That's the stuff?
That's the stuff. I'm really just trying to watch Fletcher McGee shoot all over Kentucky, if we're being honest.
How many Abilene Christian games have you watched this year?
Folks, that's going to be a hard 0.
I unfortunately have watched multiple.
Good life choices you've made.
If that doesn't show you the level of degeneracy in my gambling.
Folks, Sam is committed.
I am committed at this stage. I am in. So Abilene Christian can shoot the ball. Like, they actually can shoot the ball.
Yep.
I don't think it's going to matter. Kentucky is going to roll over these dudes.
Yes.
Are you a PJ Washington guy?
PJ Washington is totally fine. I wish I could buy into the jump shot a bit more, and then I would be a lot more interested in him. But, he's like pretty good. But
I do think
not
he can
someone
shoot.
I'm
I will
eager.
say that.
You think so?
He can shoot. Yeah.
I'm a little skeptical.
The defense is more what worries me. I don't know if he's like actually laterally quick enough to defend on the perimeter. I do think he's like Patrick Patterson, basically, though, which is like a valuable NBA player.
Yeah. I don't know that he can shoot it as well as Pat can, so I'll be a little more skeptical than you, I think.
Keldon Johnson?
I like Keldon Johnson a lot, but that's mostly just like as a person and basketball competitor. He's a fine NBA prospect, probably someone who will go in the lottery still. Shoots it reasonably well. Just like not really there athletically, though. Yeah. Especially in traffic. Maybe the spacing of the NBA helps him a lot.
I think it will. I love the fact that he's a competitor. I do worry that he gets beat a little bit more off the dribble than what you would hope defensively.
Yeah, because he's not a good athlete. So
yeah. Tyler Hero?
We've emphasized, I think, enough the value of shooting off of movement, and Tyler Hero is really good at it. Like, he's someone who will probably climb up draft boards should he choose to leave. And if he comes back, he's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, he's a guy that 94% from the foul line, 37% from three. I believe he is going to go in the first round this year. I think he is just going to go in the first round. Ashton Higgins.
He's fine. Not really someone I'm super interested in offensively, though, and has a 27% turnover rate, which is a huge problem for someone who wants to be a point guard.
Doesn't really make advanced pick and roll reads. I think he is a good defender. Like, I don't want to say that he's a bad defender. I do genuinely believe he's a good defender. I think that, like, the steals and the, like, ability to just, like, take the ball from the opposition, which is incredibly valuable, also, like, somewhat overrates him because he does get gambling a little bit more than you'd think.
That's reasonable.
I mean, like, Seton Hall beat this team earlier this year. Wofford watching.
I forgot about that.
Like watching Wofford have to deal with Kentucky would be fun, but yeah, I think Kentucky's just going to kind of blow through.
Most likely, that's what happens in this region.
So I just want to read you a quick little thing from Richard Johnson's FCC complaints about the Super Bowl article that he wrote on SB Nation. This is coming from my neck of the woods, Thousand Oaks. Like a good 45 minutes to an hour from where I live. This year's Super Bowl halftime show featured a shirtless, heavily tattooed man, Adam Levine of Maroon 5, that my entire family and friends found very indecent and unnecessary to watch. In the middle of the early evening, there should not be on television someone bearing that number of tattoos and be construed as acceptable or without controversy. A nipple of a woman is far more acceptable and natural than innumerable tattoos covering most of someone's torso and upper extremities, regardless of how toned or good-looking the person is. I consider myself fairly socially liberal, even though I thought that this was too much, especially for children.
Why? I would have to agree that it was totally unwatchable. I like to shout out my grad school roommate for turning me on to the terribleness of Maroon 5, but that's ridiculous.
That is maybe my favorite reader email. except it was an FCC complaint. Ever.
Right. Sir, this is a Wendy's.
Sir, that is the ultimate, sir. This is a Wendy's. I also got a hilarious email yelling at me for the fact that the Lakers will get AD, you stupid fool. Shout out Richard Gordon for that email. Thanks.
Yeah. Cool. You. Glad you think so, bud.
Glad you think so. Chris, do you have anything else going on in your life?
No, man, not really. Just excited to watch a bunch of basketball here over the next couple of days.
So I'm excited that the practice is now on Amazon Prime, the entire 8-season run. As someone who semi-works in that field.
You have your postseason plans ready to go?
I have my when basketball is not on plans ready to go.
Right.
Yeah, it's great. I'm excited about that. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Chris is over at Sporting News. Do you have anything you want to plug specifically right now?
I put up a big board recently. I think I'm going to do some stuff over the course of the month on guys who play well over the weekend, so people should be on the lookout for that.
Please do that. That's about all I got for you. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast again. It really helps us move up in the ratings when you do that, so please do that. I wrote a mock draft on Monday. I have a Suns thing coming later this week at some point, but until next time, we'll talk soon.